I want to tell you guys a story of how powerful rewriting my story has been. Most of my life, I identified with a very painful, abusive, abandoned, struggled story that I grew up with. I chose to dream from that place of struggle, from abuse, from abandonment. I chose to think, plan, dream from that story of struggle. And then I chose to go back. I chose to go back to the beginning, which is a scary thing, by the way. A lot of people don't want to do that, but I'm here to simply give you my story of freedom in that decision. I chose to go back and I chose to find what qualities were being developed inside of me through that story of struggle and pain and abuse. What was being driven inside of me? What qualities was I attaining about myself? What strengths? And I landed on a story of strength, courage the first time I went back. And so then I started to identify with being a strong and courageous person, not just an abused and abandoned person, but I started to shift my belief about myself to now I see myself as being strong, being courageous. And then I start to dream and I start to plan and I start to execute from that place, and life gets a little bit better. And then I use that same strength and courage to go back again to the beginning of my story. And I see it through a new lens. I see it through the lens of strength and courage. And then I land on what qualities were being driven inside of me through this new version of my story. And I land on compassion and care and gentleness. And then I start to see evidence of that compassion, that care, that gentleness all throughout my story. And now, no longer am I only strong and courageous, but now I see myself and I have evidence to it because I can go back to my story and see it of compassion and care and gentleness. And so now I add that to my avatar. I add compassion and care and gentleness to that strength and courage. And then I start to dream and I start to execute from there. My scope of vision widened and I started to see myself as somebody who was worthy of the life of somebody who was strong, courageous, compassionate, caring, and gentle, not just an abused boy. And then I used that same compassion, that same joy, that same gentleness, that strength and that courage. And I say, I'm going to go back again. And I go back again to the beginning of my story. And then I hear whispers and I see evidence of peace, joy, of freedom all throughout my story. And it shifts it yet again. It shifts how I see myself. And then I start to adjust my dreams, my execution, my plan, and my speaking from here. And then life starts to open up. I started to see myself as those things. And when you start to see yourself as a certain thing, as a certain quality, you start to recognize evidence to that fact. Life starts to line up coincidentally, synchronistically. It starts to synchronize with what it is you see about yourself. Because whatever it is you see about yourself is how you see the world. You start to see evidence of this thing. So no longer does the world look like this big, dark place that only abused little boy could function in. But now it starts to look like a world full of strength, full of courage, full of compassion, full of gentleness. full of peace, full of joy, and full of freedom. But I had to go back. I had to go back and erase the lie, the limited belief about myself that I was simply an abused little boy, a hurt little boy. And that's scary. And that's hard to do. But I promise you it's worth it. Oh, I promise you it's worth it. When you look in the mirror and you get full of that strength, that courage, that compassion, that joy, that peace, that freedom, and you start to act from that place, oh man, you start to change the world. You don't just change your world, you start to change the world, starting with the people underneath your roof. And then they go out and they press in to joy and freedom and compassion, the truth about who they really are. And then it has this ripple effect. If everybody did that, rewrite your story. Go back, rewrite your story. I promise you there's magic in it. There's peace in it. There's God in it, intentionally designing you and shaping you into exactly who you're supposed to be. It was not an accident. It maybe hurt like a son of a bitch. And don't get me wrong, some things should have never happened. Should have never happened. But I promise you, he can use them for good. And he did use them for good. If you can look close enough and have the courage and the strength to look close enough, go back, rewrite it, rewrite it and get familiar with who you were actually created to be. Go back. I promise you, you won't regret it. If you need help, send me a message, subscribe. I would love to sit down with you and peel back the layers of who you were created to be.